As many of you know, I'm a parent of now 15-year-old teens, and it's really beautiful to see all that they can accomplish. And also I get the occasional eye roll. And sometimes, though, I invite the eye roll. This week at Rabbi camp, which I'll talk a little bit more in just a second, I invited an eye roll when I texted from a class that I was in a map of the Muslim conquest and boasted that I too was learning world history like they are in their AP world history class. On cue, the eye roll emoji came 30 seconds later. I have so many positive things about the JTS-sponsored Rabbinic Training Institute, aka Rabbi Camp, held annually at the Pearlstone Retreat Center outside of Baltimore. I've been a regular attendee the majority of my career. It is really a chance to return to immersive study like we had in rabbinical school, connect with friends, get some group therapy, and recharge professionally and personally. And certainly coming out of these last 3 years, it was more important than ever for us to be together. And of course, they give us fodder for teachings upcoming, including this Shabbat. So what do I have for you after Rabbi Camp? Don't worry, I'm not going to sing Hello Mother, Hello Father. I noticed several different themes that came together, mostly probably in my head in my classes. And one of the themes is that the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh, with the Torah at its pinnacle, is really the center of Jewish history and thought. And that everything around it, even the Talmud and other things, are accoutrements to this pinnacle of the Tanakh. To metaphorize, the Torah is our polar star. It is our reference point. It is the guide that nurtures us. We learn in Pirkei Avot about the Torah, hafoch ba v'hafoch ba v'kulei ba. Turn it around. Everything is contained within this text. How is that possible? The Torah, again in metaphorical terms, is multi-dimensional. Not 3, not 4, who knows, multi-dimensional. And with creativity and depth, we can literally get to as many dimensions as possible, and therefore discovering new lessons and new meanings and new ways to improve our lives. The class where I had the map of the Muslim conquest was taught by Dr. Miriam Goldstein of Hebrew University. She specializes in Karaite Bible commentaries written in Judeo-Arabic between 800 and 1200 CE. This is the so-called Golden Age, when Jews were partners in the intellectual mosaic of the time. Not quite equals, but really amongst the texts, though, they are equals with the Christians and Muslims that they're living with. The Arabic language did wonders to unite the people of these disparate lands. And just as Christians at the time engaged in close reading of the Bible and Muslims read the Quran, Jewish intellectuals, post-Talmud, were turned to the Bible text and centered the Bible in their genres. If you're really more interested, my Tuesday evening class at 7 p.m. is actually going to delve into some of this. I didn't even know that this was one of the classes at RTI, and I had already selected to talk about the findings and treasures of the Cairo Geniza amongst many of these texts were found and how we know about them. I also took a class with Rabbi David Silber, Dean of the Drisha Institute in Manhattan. His wife is Dr. Devorah Steinmetz, who taught at JTS for many years. They are both Bible scholars. I do wonder what their pillow talk is about, but Rabbi Silber did mention that what he was going to be teaching us was a synergy between his thinking and his wife's thinking. They say that the Torah is a work of genius, with subtle and actually not so subtle interconnections between the sections. That's part of the multi-dimensionality of the Torah, is that something from the book of Numbers connects to both Exodus and Genesis at the same time. And it's really up to us, the reader, to unlock it and discover what it has to teach us. One such topic that Rabbi Silver mentioned is the cycle of oppression, suffering, and redemption. Rabbi Stecker kind of mentioned it, sort of sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. To do so, though, we have to sort of take effect that the Torah is not a history book, qua history book. It's a book that's reflecting and using the stories to reflect on God's hand in history, and also to use the term of sort of these goose eggs you hear about in different genres, leaving us clues and hint that connect it to someplace else. And so it is okay and necessary to jump from this word to that word, from verse to verse, from book to book, because actually that's the connections that the Torah wanted us to find. So here's an example that we talked about and connects to this week's Torah portion. We read the idea of us being slaves all the way back in Genesis 15, which is called the Brit Ben Abtarim, the covenant of the pieces, where God puts Abraham in a deep sleep and says, you're going to have a great nation. Abraham's still protesting. No, well, where's this kid that I'm going to have? Ishmael's not even born yet at this point. And God says, know well that your offspring shall be strangers in a land that's not theirs. They shall be oppressed and enslaved for 400 years. I will execute judgment on the nations they shall serve, and in the end they shall go free with great wealth. And they shall return here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. And let's see how that's fulfilled later in the Torah. We jump to this week's Torah portion, and it says, a new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. The Israelites are now strangers again. This is this group that does not know that Joseph actually changed his name and became an Egyptian himself. We are now strangers in a land. And what happens because we're strangers? Pharaoh sets taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. We're oppressed and enslaved to build the garrison cities. God does execute judgment later on with the plague of the firstborn. And as a result, the Egyptians allow the Israelites to loot their homes, making them rich. We have now the oppression, the enslavement, the strangers, oppression, enslavement, executing of judgment, and rechush gadol. Now for the 4 generations. When Moses is born, we see that his father is from Beit Levi, the house of Levi. Yes, we're all Bnei Yisrael, descendants of Jacob, but I see this as sort of a marker telling us this is generation 1. Levi is generation 1. Levi has a son, he has 3 sons, but the one that we're concerned with is Kahat. Kahat has a son named Amram, who we later learn is the father of Moses, generation 3, and Amram is the sire of Moses, Miriam and Aaron as well, generation 4. That generation, led by Moses, is going to be the one to go to redemption and freedom. And notice, if you were listening, the sin of the Amorites has not yet been fulfilled. Where does the connection? In chapter 21 of Numbers, when we finally we jump the 38 years to when this is the generation that's going to be going into the land of Israel. Who do they conquer? They conquered Sichon Melech HaAmori. They conquer the Amorites before they go into the land of Israel proper. They have now reached the age of redemption. Chapter 15 has been fulfilled, and the text tells us how exactly it's been by looking at different parts. Throughout Jewish history, whenever Jews were tagged as strangers and oppressed, We always look to this text and lessons to teach us about the hope and the long-term view of redemption. Dawn always follows the night. And as Maimonides teaches, that we believe in the coming of a messianic age. And even though this redemption tarries, we believe and yearn as if it's right behind the corner, coming tomorrow. This weekend we pause to honor the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May this righteous person be remembered for a blessing. He arose as a leader at one of the many times of oppression, and he gave us the hope and the courage needed to push for a better future. He told us his dream that one day oppression and prejudice would be no more, just like Abraham had a dream. And he taught us how to fight for it nonviolently. Today in 2023, redemption has not yet arrived. Racism, anti-Semitism, hatred in general is still here. If the Torah and Dr. King and others give us the hope and the tools to advocate toward a better world. So as we do that holy work of working towards a better world, let us have various songs and lessons in our heads, from the Song of the Sea, Ashira l'Adonai ki ga'o ga'a, sing to Adonai for God has triumphed gloriously, and obviously we can have the song, we shall overcome someday, in our head. Shabbat Shalom.